Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new, my name is Victoria, and in today's video we'll be drafting the pattern for a bomber jacket. So let's get started. So here's my pattern paper and my tools, and these are the measurements we'll be needing for this tutorial. So to begin, I'll start by creating my shoulder line from where all my vertical measurements will be taken from. And to do that, I'll be going down by half an inch from the end of my pattern paper. I just drew a line across, and that line will become my shoulder line. So from here, I'll start marking all my vertical measurements, starting with my shoulder to bust measurement at 11 inches. Remember, I'm using my measurements, so you'll be using yours when making one for yourself. So I'm going to square out that point with my ruler like so, and that line will become my bust line. The next measurement I'll be taking is my shoulder to waist measurement at 17 inches. I'll square out that point as well, and that will become my waistline. After that, I'll determine the full length of my bomber jacket, and I'll be using 23 inches. So from the shoulder line, I'm going down by 23 inches. I'll go ahead to square that out as well. Next, I'll be moving on to create the neckline, and this pattern is for the back. So I'm creating the back pattern first, and I'm using 3 inches for the neck width and 1 inch for the neck depth. I'll connect the 2 points together using my French curve like so, and then I'll move on to indicate that this is a center back and it will be cut on a fold. Next, I'll be moving on to create the shoulder slope. So along the shoulder line, I'm marking half of my across shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches. And from there, I'll be going down by 1 inch. Then I'll go on to connect that point back into the neckline to create my shoulder slope. Once that's done, I'll be moving up from my bust line by 2 inches to create my upper chest line. You can determine your upper chest line by dividing your bust circumference by 6 plus 1.5, and then mark that point downwards from the shoulder line. So for me, it's the same thing as going up from my bust line by 2 inches. So next, I'll be connecting the shoulder slope to meet the chest line. So I'm just measuring 8 inches along the upper chest line to make sure the line is straight. Then I'll go in with my ruler to connect the shoulder slope to the chest line like so. And then I'll start inserting my horizontal measurements. For my horizontal measurements, I decided to go with a quarter of my hip circumference plus 2 inches. So a quarter of my hip circumference is 11 plus 2 inches, making it 13. So first, I'll be extending all the horizontal lines, and when I'm done with that, I'll go ahead and mark 13 inches all the way downwards. And then I'll connect them all together in a straight line. So now that I'm done with that, it's time to work on the armhole, and the first thing I'll do is to divide that vertical line by 2. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm marking the midpoint of that line, and then I'll be going in with my French curve to connect that point to meet the upper chest line. So just curve it in such a way that it blends in nicely, and when I'm done with that, I'll be moving on to add my side seam allowance. So this is me indicating that this pattern is for the back. So for my side seam allowance, I'll be using 1 inch. You can use half an inch as well. So when I'm done connecting the side seam allowance, I'll go on to cut this out because I want to use the back pattern to draft out the front. So you can see I'm not cutting along the armhole. I'll be doing that afterwards. Now this is a fresh pattern paper that I'll be using for the front panel, and the first thing to do is to create the zipper allowance. So I'm going in by 1 inch along the center front. I'll connect the points together with my ruler, and that will be the zipper allowance. I'll go on to indicate that and indicate my new center front, and then I'll move on to create the shoulder line. So just like for the back pattern, I'm coming down by half an inch. I'm marking that point all the way across, and then I'll score it out with my ruler. Next, I'll bring in the back pattern to place on top of this one. So I'm matching shoulder line to shoulder line, and as you can see, I'm placing the center back after the zipper allowance. Now I'll just go in with my marker to transfer all the important points. So I'm just transferring all the points for the horizontal line along the center and along the side. Once I'm done with that, I'll take out the back pattern and square out all those points. So there's the full length of the jacket, the waistline, the bust line, and the upper chest line. Moving on to the neckline for the front, I'll be creating a simple 3x3 round neckline. So the front neckline is 3 inches wide and 3 inches deep. I'll be connecting the 2 points together with my French curve and then move on to create the shoulder slope as well, just like I did for the back pattern. I'll connect the shoulder slope to meet the upper chest line, and then I'll go on to extend the horizontal lines until it meets the point I marked along the sides. So I'll just go in with my tape to make sure the measurements are correct before going in with my ruler to connect all the lines together like so. When I'm done with that, I'll go ahead to create my armhole just like I did for the back pattern. So as you can see, the armhole for the front and back pattern are exactly the same because I want a bit of bulk in the front. Now it's time to indicate the pocket, and for this jacket, I'm going for a welt pocket, and I'll be creating that pocket along the waistline. So the first thing to do is to find the midpoint of the measurement I have along the waist. Next, I'll determine how long I want the welt pocket to be, and I'm going with 5 inches, and I'll be using the waistline as the midpoint of that 5 inches, as you can see, and I'll be drawing out the pocket in such a way that it will be slanting towards the center front. So I'm just marking where my pocket begins and where it ends, and then I'll go ahead to connect the 2 points together with my ruler. Next, I'll be marking half an inch on both sides of that line. I'll do that on both ends of the line and go on to connect the points like so. Please use a ruler for this. I don't even know why I'm using my tape. Once I'm done with that, I'll go on to connect the outer points together, and then along the middle line, I'll be coming in by half an inch on both ends. I'll go in again with my ruler to connect that point to the outer ends in the shape of a triangle. So just watch what I'm doing, and once that's done, the welt pocket is ready. I'll go on to indicate that and then start working on the band. So for the band, the first thing I'll be doing is to come up by 3 inches from the hemline. That's how wide I want the band to be. And then using my ruler, I'll go on to square out that point before cutting it out. I'll also be cutting out the excess along the hem as well. And then I'll go on to indicate that this is the band. So I'm going to be cutting out this band on a black stretchy fabric, and then I'll be attaching it to the rest of the front piece. And because the fabric is stretchy, I'll be taking away 3 inches from the length plus the 1 inch sewing allowance, making it 4 inches. So in total, I'll be taking away 4 inches from the length of the band. That way, when I attach it to the rest of the front piece, it'll create that bulk effect that bomber jackets usually have. Now, if the fabric you'll be using for the band is not so stretchy, you don't have to take away 3 inches. You can take away 2 inches or 2.5. So I've gone in by 4 inches from the side. I'm just going to connect the points together and then cut it out. So the end of the band will be cut on a fold. I'm just indicating that. I'm also going to indicate that this band is for the front piece. Then on the other end of the band, I'll be adding half an inch allowance that will be used to attach it to the rest of the front piece. And I'll be adding half an inch on this pattern as well. So once I'm done with the band, I'll go ahead to add my seam allowance along the armhole, the shoulder slope, and the neckline. And I'll be using half an inch seam allowance for these parts. After connecting the seam allowances, I'll go ahead to cut along those lines. And that's it for the front pattern. I added the same seam allowance to the back pattern as well. And now I'll move on to create the band for the back. So the width of the band will be the same as the front. So I'm just going up from the hemline by 3 inches. I'll square out that point with my ruler, label it, and then cut it out. I'll go on to indicate that I'll be adding half an inch joining allowance on both ends. After which I'll be coming in by 3 inches from the side. I'll connect the point and cut that out, and then indicate that the end of the band will be cut on a fold just like the front. So the band will be attached to the rest of the back piece like so, which means that this side of the band will be the center back and should be cut on a fold as well. So that's it for the back pattern. I'm going to set it aside. I'll then bring in the front band because the band will be cut as a single piece. So I'm going to be taping these two together, and when cutting onto fabric, one end will be on a fold while the other end will be left open in order to attach the zipper at the front. And of course, the lower part of the band will be cut on a fold as well. So now that we're done with the band, it's time to move on to the neck collar or the neck band. So this is the front piece, and the first thing to do is to measure around the neckline, not the allowance, the original neckline. So I'm just going in with my tape and measuring around the neckline like so. And when I measured, I had 5.5 inches. I'll multiply that by 2 and set the front piece aside. So I'll be moving on to the back piece. I'll be measuring the neckline of the back as well. And when I measured, I had 3.5 inches, and I'll multiply that by 2 as well. So I'm going to be folding this small piece of pattern paper like so. And on this piece, I'll be drafting out the neck collar. So for the front neckline, I measured 5.5 inches and 3.5 inches for the back. I'll be multiplying each of these by 2 to give 11 inches and 7 inches respectively. And when I add that, I'll have a total of 18 inches. And that will be the length of my collar. So because I folded my pattern in half, I'm going to mark in half of that figure, which is 9 inches. So I just marked 9 inches from the folded end. So for the width of my neckband, I'm going with 1.5. So from that point, I'm going upwards by 1.5 inches. I'll go in with my ruler to connect all the points together like so, and along the length of one end I'll be going in by 3 inches, after which I'll be using my French curve to connect it to meet the other end like so. So that's it for the neckband. I'll just go ahead to add half an inch allowance all around. I'll label the pattern and then indicate that the end of the neckband will be cut on a fold. So that's it for the neckband. Now it's time to move on and create the sleeves. And for the sleeves, I used a basic sleeve pattern to draft out the sleeves for the bomber jacket. So this is going to be the center of the sleeve and it will be cut on a fold. So I just traced out the shape of the back sleeve, not the front, the back sleeve on a fresh pattern paper. And then I just extended it, and I did that because when I measured the armhole of my pattern, it was much longer than the original basic sleeve pattern. I got 12.5 inches, so I just extended the original sleeve pattern to give me that. For the sleeve length, I'll be working with 24 inches. And at the end of the sleeve, I took away 1.5 inch from the original width to reduce bulk. So I'll go on to cut along those lines and take away all the excess. And I'll also be adding half an inch along the end that I'll be using to connect it to the wristband. Now the length of the wristband is the same as my wrist circumference, and the width is 3 inches. So one end of the wristband will be cut on a fold, while on the other end I'll be adding half an inch allowance that will be used to join it to the rest of the sleeve. So that's it guys, these are all the patterns that I'll be using to create the bomber jacket. And in my next tutorial I'll be sharing with you the stitching process. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you stayed to the end, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video.